Welcome everyone. My name is Edna Risha and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Arabic Culture. Thank you so much for joining us today. And at the CAC Human Library Series to celebrate the life and the legacy of Dr. Mohammed Alwan. The Center for Arabic Culture is a non-profit organization that to celebrate the Arabic culture and the Arab American experience through education and the arts. Our Arabic language and music programs and cultural events all form a bridge of humanity and awareness to the entire community. We are so glad to welcome you here today to celebrate Dr. Alwan and get inspired by his life journey. You can see on the screen when I remove this, the event program today. And I want to say a special thank you to all our guest speakers, Professor Nasser Rabat, Dunya Alwan, Ali Muheshi. Thanks to Suhaib Yassin for introducing us to Isam Nasser, and thanks to Muhammad Mansour. I want to also say a special thank you for Khalid and Anwar Diab for providing the film that will be screening at the end, showing Dr. Alwan introducing the poet Muzaffar Nawab. Thank you so much. I don't want to take much more time. I would like to welcome Professor Nasser Rabat, Professor and Director of the MIT Al-Khair program.
Hello everyone. Hello. It's nice to see all of you here and people who were close to Mohammed Alwan and who have benefited from his presence with us for the last 40, 50 years. Start again. So Mohammed Alwan was a complex, multifaceted man. He was an Iraqi, heart and soul, who nonetheless spent more than 70 years of his life outside Iraq. He lived in Egypt, in England, before he was to come here to settle in the United States in the late 1950s, without losing his visceral, romantic attachment to and love for that remembered Iraq of the 1940s Carrara, where he was born and raised. He was a perpetual exile who taught himself to fit anywhere, and he did fit in Boston, while always feeling that he can very easily belong elsewhere or nowhere if he needs to. He was a Shiite who sublimated the sect's tragic history in his worldview, but passionately hated sectarianism. He was an engineer who never practiced engineering. He was a husband and a father, and I'm sure Dunya will have many beautiful reminiscences about their relationship, but remained all of his life a free soul. He was an agnostic who knew more about the history of Islam than a top graduate of the seminaries of Qom or Najaf. He thought of religion as a component of culture only, and preached secularism throughout his life. He was a lifelong communist who believed in a better future for humanity when and if the struggle of the poor, downtrodden, and disenfranchised managed to achieve some economic parity with the rich and powerful. He was a book and photographs collector and dealer who amassed a huge collection of everything related to the Middle East, from historic Quran to contemporary political analysis. His collection of old photographs of the Middle East was one of the premier collections in North America and was to be auctioned in the 1980s for about $500,000. Alwan was also a teacher of Arabic, who taught in various universities before retiring from Tufts University. He was an avid reader and writer and a sporadic poet who encapsulated in his poetry the sarcasm of an Ibn Nawas and the bitter indignation of a Muzaffar Nawab. He rarely published his poetry and preferred sharing his short lyrical quips with friends, and we used to receive them from him. He occasionally published articles on various topics from the history of Arabic poetry and translated selections of contemporary American liberation poetry. especially Langston Hughes, the African-American social activist and premier poet of the Harlem Renaissance. To my knowledge, Alwan published only one book, معتقدات العرب البدائية، قصيدة الحكم البهراني في عجائب المخلوقات, which came out in 2010. In it, he combined his love of the convoluted poetry and the mysteries of pre-Islamic religious beliefs among the Arabs by analyzing and contextualizing a 40-plus verse poem of a little-known poet and of the 2nd century Hijr, or 8th century of our own era, Al-Hakam bin Amr al-Bahrani, that surveys the animalistic and paranormal beliefs of the Jahiliyyah and reveals their complex and polycultural referentiality. But Mohammed Alwan, as you may have deduced by now, was first and foremost an Arab nationalist, an Arabist, and a devotee of the Arabic language. These three interrelated registers mingled in his conscience to form a complicated identitarian whole. He was an Arab nationalist in as far as he felt a strong affinity with fellow Arabs, with the causes of the Arabic people, especially Palestine, and with the desired goals of Arab awakening. But he was also a committed internationalist who had never forgotten the lines he used to sing every day in prison in Iraq with Fahd and the other communist comrade. Let us gather together, and tomorrow the Internationale will be the human race. He was an Arabist in the same sense of having devoted most of his life to the study and appreciation of the Arabic language, teaching it, researching it, singing it, marveling at its richness, and excitedly probing its intricacies. The Arabic language was indeed Alwan's ultimate love. Everything else he did in his active life was related to his profound fascination with the Arabic language. He venerated its expansiveness, expressiveness, and its long historical evolution from the spoken language of a subgroup living in northern Arabia to the mother tongue of Islam, and its absorption of multifarious currents from other languages ranging from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. He also adored its particular sounds, melodious cadences, and logical syntax. This was the Mohammed Alwan I met in early 1985 when I was accompanied by two of my Harvard colleagues to his house for a book club meeting. Alwan had started the book club in 1981 with a group of students of Arabic in Cambridge. They began by reading Sanallah Ibrahim Kafkaesque debut novel, Al-Lajna, or the Committee. Being the odd Islamic architectural history students at MIT, I sought out opportunities to interact with people who understand and care for the field I was specializing in. Alwan's apartment on the city line between Cambridge and Somerville offered me a haven where professors and students of Arabic culture met and socialized over a discussion of an Arabic novel. I became an irregular member until I left to do research in Cairo in 1987 and did not rejoin the club again until the early 1990s. Alwan, in the meantime, had moved to his shop and apartment on Cambridge Street in East Cambridge, and the group has shrunk and shed most of its non-Arab members. Alwan remained the host, the guide for the choice of reading, and the vibrant discussion during the meetings. Something, however, broke in Alwan's heart in 2003. He never divulged what caused this noticeable anguish, but we all guessed that it was the invasion of Iraq and the ensuing destruction of the country. Not that Alwan was a supporter of Saddam, far from it. He loathed the dictator and was very happy to see him fall. But he was disheartened by the bleak days that the American invasion and the chaos that resulted from the ignorance and carelessness of the new masters have breathed upon Iraq. Alwan began to withdraw, first from the city itself to a suburb, then from hosting the meetings of the club, and finally from attending all the meetings and vigorously guiding the discussions. He remained the same person, filled with knowledge, warmth, and bonhomie, but his appearances became rare. His advanced age, misfortunes, and the weight of the defeat of the ideals he grew up with and put his trust in from a more equitable society to seeing a free Iraq and a free Palestine took their toll. He died before witnessing this last round of destruction and humiliation in Gaza and Lebanon. But I'm sure a deep sadness accompanied him as he passed, as it still does all of us. May he rest in luminous peace.
So I'm Dunia, and this is my cousin Rand, and this is my cousin Rafa, very beloved, like sisters to me and daughters to my father. So they're just standing with me because I love to be in a cousin sandwich.
Louder would be better.
Okay.
Use the mic.
Use the mic. Okay, we'll have it this way. Okay. So, on behalf of our family, we say welcome to the celebration of life of my father, Mohammed Alwan. And this is a little bit of a Academy Award type speech, and it's very short. It's mostly about gratitude and legacy. I really want to give first a heartfelt thank you to Renda, Alma, Nasser, and Khawla. Thank you so much for offering this gathering to us. It means the world to us. We've been looking forward to it, and we're grateful for it. So thank you for making this and for gathering us this way. So as many of you know, my father fled Iraq as a very young man. He was only able, he left at 17 or 18. He was only able to return for 2 short visits. He left Iraq, but Iraq never left him. And as he entered his 80s, I began a decade-long campaign to try to get him to move to California where I live. I built an apartment, and I lobbied with Yemeni food and Afghani food that's in my neighborhood. And I persisted, and he refused. And that is because all the pestering in the world he wouldn't leave for all the pestering in the world, and that's because of the community here. It meant the world to him to have people who understood what he cared the most about Arabic language, people, culture, food, and to be able to gather with all of you. So I thank you for that. His diaspora was eased by the presence of you all in his life, and if he could not live out his days on the banks of the Tigris, as he always imagined, living out his days on the banks of the Charles were a worthy substitute. Thank you. Many of you have written me on Facebook and email and other ways, and they've written about what it was like to study with my father, or to be in his kitchen and smell what he was making, to be in the stacks of his library and smell the actual volumes that surrounded them. And people talked about how it eased their own diasporic sorrows. And also, what it meant to not be able to know their grandparents, but to know my father. Not be able to know their parents, again, because of war and the strife of our region, but to know my father. So I wanted to share a little bit about my father's collection and what is on the horizon for it, because I think that the way my father lived his life is something that that will continue to have ripples, and that is the hope for us, is that we can continue to be able to share something of him now that he can't do it himself. So first, and extremely importantly, out of the blue came Kamran Rastagar, a person who teaches now at Tufts University the home institution of my father, where he taught for about 30 years. My father taught at many esteemed universities and really felt the most at home at Tufts, and he retired from Tufts. So Kamran and I have been in conversation, and because of Kamran's wisdom and knowledge and commitment and tirelessness during the beginning of a semester on a tight deadline, we have been working to move some of my father's books to the Tufts libraries, a couple of Tufts libraries, so that those smells can be intact and people can continue to use those works and access them, for the students can and scholars can. So that's been an epic project over the last few months, and I know that some of you are attached to these volumes, and I want to make sure that you know that they are welcome, that you're welcome to continue to access them. Dima Ayub, similarly at Middlebury College, is helping create a room in dedication in part to my father, where some of these volumes will be available for students and scholars. And it's just with tremendous gratitude that I can say that. Rana Aziz, who was my father's student at Tufts for many years, is now working on a scholarship in his name. And for me to think that people will study under my father's, just being shepherded from a very far distance by my father is extremely heartening and meaningful to me, and so I have so much gratitude for that. And then the part of my father's collection, there were two parts that were extremely dear to him. His photography collection, which has been mentioned, we're still trying to find a good home for it. It's safe, it's secure, it's archivally contained. So that's something that's up in the air. But his Shidiyat collection, I also have to thank Kamran. My father very much wanted his extensive Shidiyat collection to be returned to the place of Shidiyat's living, Lebanon. And we know the conditions in Lebanon and how tenuous and painful it is. And we are still figuring out a path to have those works there, because we know that the Arab world is a phoenix, and it reinvents itself over and over and over again, and continues to fly and sing, and we imagine that in the future, and we imagine these volumes of my father's being in the hands of scholars there. The last thing is that we don't have a home for every single one of my father's volumes, and at some point in the next couple months, there'll be an open house, and we would like to welcome people who might want to take something and will either contribute to DASA or will contribute to my father's scholarship. But we want all these volumes to find their way into people's hands who will treasure them. Selma was there just the other day and found, Selma Awayash, looking for a needle in a haystack with me, and found a massive book about the lexicon of horses. It's huge, and another one about palmistry. There's so many beautiful, interesting books there, and we want them in the world. Let's see, what else? I think that might be everything. Yeah, I wanted to just say how meaningful it has been for me to have people reach out and send photos and tell me stories, and I want to invite anyone who has anything like that to. I'll hear from you sometime today also, but if you want, my email address is dunyawan@gmail, and I welcome you to stay in touch, and yeah, you're most welcome to. I think that is everything. Again, with tremendous gratitude, I now present to you Ali.
Familiar faces here. This is the Alwan family, in whom I married 26 years ago. A beautiful wife, right? So you will be able to recognize a few faces here. So I'm the son-in-law, and that gives me access to the room when things happen. But I'm also a Muslim, and a friend and a student of Baqir. Baqir used to get us together every now and then in his home, and the last time he attended, we had 45 people in the room. So he will be so missed. I'm here to talk about, or I'm here to tell you 3 small stories of my personal experience with Baqir. Baqir and I connected on poetry, literature, memories of Iraq. I left Baghdad at the age of 10 and never visited again. And probably Baqir was feeling similar. There's some similarities here. I also share with Baqir love to poetry, although I'm a scientist. I by no means I can claim academic abilities in poetry. So, but my three stories are going to touch a little bit on Bakr and the person and poetry. The first one is Bakr being a dean was falsafa. I'm gonna speak the English version of it, but you will have also the Arabic version on my slides. Bakr is, in my eyes, a scholar of Arabic language. He believes in the importance of literature and poetry and in self-development. He really did not believe, as Nasser said, in the ability of religions to achieve human progress or advance humanity. Bakr based his views on the philosophy of many branches in history and Islamic societies, but the one branch is al-Mu'tazila, which flourished in the 10th century in Baghdad, was one of his favorites and one of the followers or leaders of al-Mu'tazila was Abu al-Ma'amri, and we talked a lot with Bakr about him. I did spend lovely evenings with him, and the atmosphere was lively and debating and challenging sometimes. We sometimes agreed and sometimes did not. But there was critical thinking for sure with Bakr. And there was a deep analysis of text. I would start usually the conversation with some verses and Bakr would continue on and finish the whole poem. So this is one of the verses that we recited over and over again, and I'm gonna read the Arabic first. Hafat al-Hanifa, which is essentially the pious mist. When Nasara met, the Christians are misguided. Yehudu harat, Jews are confused, and the Jews mudallala, the Zoroastrians are lost. Ithnan, there are two people of earth. ذو عقل بلا دين, a sane without religion, وآخر دين بلا عقل له, and another religious without mind. So this was the thinking of Bakr, and so was also the thinking in Baghdad and Mu'tazila in the 10th century. Imagine the progress that they had at that time. Let's move on to the next story, and this is an interesting story because we talk so much about it, and the story is al-Wathba. And I really spent so much time trying to understand what does Wathba mean. So I scoured through the dictionaries, through the literature, and the closest I could get to is this position, the position of the lion that is just about to jump and attack somebody. There is wathba for the ballet dancer, there is wathba for the person who is about to jump, and there is wathba of the soldier, and there's obviously a wathba of the lions. And Nasser, I would be remiss if I did not bring my obsession and Hamra. I actually read recently that this is the fountain of the lions in the Hamra Palace in Granada. And the text says, al-Isud al-Mutawathtiba, the lions in al-Wathba position. So that, in a way, supports or substantiates my previous claim that al-Wathba is, somebody who is poised and about to attack. So what does that mean? So Baghdad, let's go back to Baghdad, 1947-48. There was, what you need to know about the Wathba is there was an unrest. It is related to the Treaty of Portsmouth, where at that time the Kingdom of Iraq, the royalists wanted to bring in more British troops. Iraq was under the mandate of Britain, and there's a guy, Nur Said, who's who had let's say a reputation. He was a loyalist and was a frequent flyer of the Iraqi government. And Nur Said was engineering a renewal of the Portsmouth Treaty, and the Iraqi Communist Party, of which Bakr was a follower in his teens, were opposed to the Portsmouth Treaty. To give you an example, Nur Said held 9 premiership in Baghdad, in Iraq. I put 8, but there is a 9th one. So with time, he became a disgraced premier, obviously because he was pro-British, pro-violence, pro-law and order, so harsh, and he was suppressive. So at some point around this time, and what happened when Northside was engineering the renewal of the Portsmouth Treaty, and Baqir at that time was young. He was in his teens. This is direct story from Baqir. He combined romance and poetic ability. He had obviously the energy of youth that flows within him, and his heart beats with great love for poetry and freedom. He believed truly in the word as a force to be reckoned with. Fast forward, Baqir, we used to discuss Al-Wathba through a prominent poem. Again, there's a poem related to Al-Wathba here that describes the trigger of the confrontation and the return of the corrupt government. There's a return pattern here of Northside and a return of the Portsmouth Treaty. Now, let's try to imagine what was happening during Al-Wathba. People on the street, there's angry. Mohammed Al-Jawari, a prominent Iraqi poet, was leading the crowd. But there was another poet here, Mohammed Alwan. And Mohammed Alwan said that verse to which we will come back. But the key word here is adet, which means return. And obviously, this verse Baqir told me started to resonate with him so much that to the extent that Baqir wrote the entire poem and took it with him next day to school and started to distribute the poem as a reaction. The Iraqi oil police arrested Baqir and took him to Sijn al-Kut prison, where he also met Fahd, the leader of the Iraqi Communist Party. And this was a big deal in his life. Baqir was less than under 18, he was still a school kid. But he participated in that, this part of the poem resonated a lot with him. So we spent many evenings, Baqir and I, debating on the effectiveness of revolutions. This was a question I would ask, not Baqir. Baqir truly believed in revolutions. So the Wathba poem became an inevitable citation that we would find ourselves repeating with a smile. Now this is the poem. قم من ضريحك واخلع حلة الكفن. Rise from your shrine and take off your shroud. Obviously the poet is speaking to the motherland. فراية الشعب قد رفعت على الوطن. The people's banner is raised over the nation. عادت حليمة للميدان ثانية. حليمة is a metaphor for somebody who repeats previous mistakes, but this time we're familiar with عادت حليمة بعادتها القديمة. حليمة returned to her previous habits, but Mohammed Alwan here morphed it into عادت حليمة للميدان ثانية. Halima is a metaphor for the enemy, for Halima has returned to the field again. تجر أديال ثوب دنس بالذهب. Drying the dress that is stained with dirt. So that's Northside coming back to the premiership and is driving the Treaty of Portsmouth with him. My third story is about power dates. Baqir loved dates, and he has really a genuine passion for it. His diabetes did not stop him from enjoying them, and for him dates were almost a time tablet. He would take the date, and the date will transform him into his beloved Baghdad. And obviously, there's a poem related to that. This poem is from Mullah Abud al-Karhi, who is a legend of vernacular Iraqi, wrote a lot of funny poems. Baghdad مبنية تمر, Baghdad is built with dates. فتش وكل خستاوي. carve the wall and eat خستاوي. خستاوي is a type of date. البرحي وبريم وبقلب. And you have all these dates. الأجنبي نهبني نهب. The colonizer robbed me with. وما أعطاني بالزور والشبه. Empty. وأعطاني بالزور وكذا empty dishonest promises. فرهد الحنطة والشلب is rice. Stole the wheat and rice with Tamar al-Khadrawi and the Khadrawi dates. So that's another poem that I used to laugh about with Bakr whenever we served some dates with tea. So, coming to an end here, goodbye, Bakr. I'm sure Bakr is with us, and I'm sure he's listening. Dear uncle and friend Bakr, you touched our hearts with your boundless belief in humanity. Your curiosity extended far beyond the world of academia. As you constantly sought new adventures with a youthful enthusiasm, and that was contagious. You were accepting with a rare ability to make us all feel welcomed and entertained, always ready with a poem that perfectly captured the moment. As you leave us for eternity, your absence leaves us or leaves a void that will only be filled with your legacy. Bakr will always make me think and smile. Thank you.
We'll leave the slides on. I'm going to read the statement by Isam Nassar. Isam is a Palestinian professor of history at Doha University. His dissertation deals with the early photograph of the Middle East, especially Palestine. Isam can't be here with us, so you're going to have to listen to me. Dr. Alwan, a legacy of preservation and generosity. Ever since I met Mohammed Alwan back in 1989, he became a close friend and mentor. I have many fond memories of him that I would have liked to share with you. However, I am certain all those present in this event have their own stories to tell about him. I will limit my comments to him as a collector of photographs, though he was much more. I feel I earned the right to talk about his collection, not just because I knew it and used it in my work, but also as a tribute to him and to his nephew, the late Yasser Alwan, who used to call me my photographic uncle due to my work on photography and friendship with his uncle Mohammed. Dr. Alwan was not just a collector and antiquarian, he was a custodian of history, a guardian of cultural heritage, and a visionary who dedicated many decades of his life to the preservation of a unique narrative captured through the lens of 19th century photographers of the Middle East. His large collection of photographs featuring works by renowned photographers such as Bonfi, Viato, Zengaki, and others stood as a testament to his passion for the visual documentation of a bygone era. One of the most remarkable aspects of Dr. Alwan's collection was its originality. Unlike many other collections that consisted of reproductions or copies, Dr. Alwan's trove of photographs comprised authentic, original prints that bore the mark of time and history. These images, frozen in time, offered a glimpse into the past, allowing the viewer to witness the Middle East through the eyes of European photographers who traversed the region with their cameras, capturing moments of beauty, mystery, and everyday life. Dr. Alwan's generosity knew no bounds. Despite the rarity and value of his collection, he graciously permitted scholars and researchers, including myself, to access and utilize his photographs for academic pursuits. His willingness to share this treasure trove of visual history exemplifies his commitment to fostering a deeper understanding and appreciation of the cultural legacy of the Middle East. I am certain that his generosity extends far beyond my own experience and enriched the work of many others in the field. Tragically, Dr. Alwan's aspiration to ensure the legacy of his collection were cut short by his untimely passing. As he approached retirement, he contemplated the future of this cherished photograph. Fate intervened, leaving his collection in limbo. The meticulous curation and historical significance and the potential impact of his collection on future generations were suddenly overshadowed by the sudden loss of its devoted curator. I'm reflecting on Dr. Alwan's life and legacy. One cannot help but marvel at the passion, dedication, and vision that fueled his endeavor as a collector and antiquarian. His collections of 19th century photographs of the Middle East stands as a testament to his unwavering commitment to preserving visual heritage that might have otherwise faded into obscurity. Though his attempts to sell the collection may have been thwarted, his generosity and the indelible mark he left on those who had the privilege of engaging with his photographs will endure a lasting tribute to his legacy. Isam Nassar.
Good evening, friends and family of Dr. Alwan. And good evening to the spirit of Dr. Alwan. I hope you're around here somewhere, because we already miss you. I first met Alwan back in the mid-1980s in the basement of his Cambridge place. I can't call it store, bookstore. I remember being so impressed with his extensive collection of books, Islamic manuscripts, makhlutat, and antique pieces, as well as with the whole aroma of history and intellect filling that basement. But what really fascinated me was the kind and range of topics being discussed during that first visit. And the encyclopedic knowledge of and the ability to retrieve from memory classical Arabic poetry. There was an argument going on between some visitors about the real author of a certain verse, I don't recall which, while Alwan was listening. Alwan finally reached to that little circular swivel table to the left of his desk, pulled a heavy reference volume from among several. He referred to those volumes as Maraja li-Ummahat al-Kutub, the mothers of books. He turned a few pages, went to a shelf on the corner, pulled out an old yellowish book, laid it out on the table, opened it on a certain page, and pointed to the verse in question, and gave the correct identity of the author and settled the debate. So Alwan was our Google way before it was. In the following years, I had plenty of occasions where I was further impressed with his ability to recite from memory all kinds of poetry, and in many areas, especially the humor, the leather, love, almost erotic. Both of us were fans of Abu Nawas. When we had our first daughter, Alwan asked me, "Did you choose a name for her yet?" I said, "Yes, Rama." He asked if I knew that verse with the word drama in it. And I said, "No." He then launched into reciting, "ولما تلاقينا على سفح راما وجدت بنان العامرية أحمرا فقلت خضبت الكف على فراقنا فقالت معاذ الله إن ذلك ما جرى ولكنني لما وجدتك راحلا بكيت دما حتى بللت به الثرى مسحت بأطراف البنان مدامعي فصار خضابا في اليدين كما ترى." One of the most beautiful ghazal poems by Qais ibn Murawah, and what a pleasure to be around somebody like Alwan. Of all the passions that Alwan had, and he had a few, perhaps cooking was one of the lesser known passions of his, especially cooking for visitors to his house, whether old friends, new friends, or just visitors passing by Boston. Nothing fancy really. The usual red bean stew and rice. But rice for Alwan is not your typical side dish. A successful preparation of rice to Alwan must produce that crusty layer at the bottom, crunchy, semi-burned, golden block of rice that can be separated from the rest of the rice in one whole circular glowing disc, drenched in olive oil, or hakaka, as Alwan would call it. He would carefully separate it in one piece, cut it with a knife, and distribute fairly among his guests as the prized part of the meal. I will miss the hakaka of Alwan. During the past several years, I was fortunate to spend more time with Alwan as we started the ritual of meeting and driving together to our Sunday afternoon book club meeting. During the ride, we would avoid talking about the novel at hand, which he insisted on, that we were going to discuss. So, quote, the discussion would be fresh, Alwan would insist. Instead, we would spend the half hour or so of our ride from Burlington to Watertown, Trima and Osama Kayad's house, most of the time, sometimes Aida's, engaging in one of his other passions, depending on the mood that afternoon, or mazaj. In a good one, we would join voices in singing along with an Kulthum song, often Rubaiyat al-Khayyam, one of our common favorites. He liked songs with classical poems as its lyrics. He would often pause at one verse or just one word to comment about Ahmad Rami's brilliance in his translation of the Rubaiyat al-Khayyam into Arabic. لبست ثوب العيش لم أستشر. He would point to the Arabic language ability, using ustashar as an example. But the mood during those rides was not always jovial and happy to provoke an Kulthum song. If the day's politics or news from the Arab world were as bad as they often are, we would resort to our beloved common favorite poet, Muzaffar al-Nawab from Iraq. A friend of Alwan and an idol of mine growing up in the 70s and 80s. With his defiant, sad, angry poems, read with his unique, defiant, thundering style, for those unfamiliar, Muzaffar offers the best and most appropriate language to address the Arab leaders and regimes, and whose language and verse have infiltrated the political discourse of young Arabs since the 1970s. As Alwan and I both have memorized a good chunk of his poems, we often recited a verse or a sentence of his to fill in or complete a thought or announce a position. For example, if I was cursing at this hopeless Arab nation or governments, and one would recite something like, لا تخاف إننا أمة لو جهنم صبت على رأسها واقفة. To which I would continue, ما حمى الدهر قامتها أبدا إنما تنحني لتعين المقادير إن سقطت أن تقوم. This is the kind of afternoon we're Another of our Muzaffar favorite verses that I may use to calm Alwan, sometimes he gets too upset, what he curses Arab governments, is Arab will come up and say, قدمي في الحكومات, trying to imitate the Iraqi accent of Muzaffar, which entices Alwan to get in character of how Muzaffar reads his poetry, trying to imitate him as well, which he does a better job. With his Iraqi thundering voice and accent, he goes like, not only قدمي في الحكومات, قدمي في الحكومات في البدء والنصف والخاتمة. Or حاكم طوله وكرامته دون هذا حذائي. All one needs to express anger and disgust. So when I heard that in his final moments of life, Alwan requested to listen to Kulthum, I smiled, thinking that in those final moments, Alwan was indeed in a good mood. He was not reciting Muzaffar.
The final segment of our event today will be screening a film. Thank you, Khawna and Anwar, for providing the film. And we'll be joined by Dr. Alwan, introducing about Muzaffar al-Nawab, an event that happened at MIT, and Professor Nasser introduced it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to just say 2 sentences in English, and then I'm going to revert to Arabic, which I assume that all of you know that this is the language that we're going to be using today. My name is Nasser Rabbat, and I teach history of architecture here at MIT. And on behalf of the Aga Khan Program for Islamic Architecture and the Iraqi Organization for Human Rights, I welcome you all to this evening with the poet Muzaffar al-Nawab and musicologist Saadi al-Hadithi. مساء الخير. مثلا أهلا وسهلا فيكم بهالأمسية في MIT والمنظمة العراقية لحقوق الإنسان في هذه الأمسية مع الشاعر الكبير مظفر النواب والموسيقار ومؤرخ الموسيقى الأستاذ سعدي الحديثي. أنا ما آخذ ولا وقت الكلام، رح أترك الكلام للصديق الدكتور محمد علوان ليقدم ضيفينا الكبيرين. والبرنامج سيكون كالتالي: بعد ما الدكتور علوان يقدم الأستاذ مظفر نواب الشاعر الكبير حيجي ويلقي أشعاره، وبعدين حناخد 10 دقائق أو أقل حتى خلينا نقول استراحة قصيرة، وثم نعود للأستاذ الحديثي لكي يقدم لنا الموسيقى والشعر ويغنيهم لنا في القسم الثاني من الأمسية. فالدكتور محمد علوان تفضل.
أيها الحفل الكريم، مساء الخير. قبل كل شيء أود أن أرحب بكم إلى هذه الأمسية الفنية. وقبل أن نبتدئ برنامج الليلة أود أن أشكر الدكتور ناصر الرباط والأغا خان بروجرام في تهيئة المستلزمات الكافية لإحياء هذه الأمسية. وبنفس الوقت أود أن أشكر السيدة خولة ذياب وأنور ذياب لمساهمتهما الفعالة في إسداء أكبر المساعدات في استقبال الضيفين العزيزين وفي الخدمات التي لا حصر لها للاستعداد لهذه الأمسية. ولا أنسى أن أشكر الصديق فريد ياسين على جهوده الكبيرة في هذا الشأن. وللأسف أن هذا الصديق لم يستطع حضور ندوتنا هذه لأنه اضطر أن يسافر إلى سويسرا مساء أمس. الشاعر مظفر النواب ليس غريبا على أحد منكم، ونحن نشكر كل أولئك الذين ساعدوا على الإتيان به وبالدكتور سعدي الحديثي إلى أمريكا، وخاصة منظمة تراث الشرق. مظفر النواب ليس شاعرا مبدعا فقط، إنما هو ظاهرة شعرية ضخمة، ظاهرة شعرية ومظاهرة شعرية ضخمة في الحدث الشعري المعاصر. أقول ظاهرة شعرية ضخمة لأنه في الوقت الذي كنا نعتقد أن دور القصيدة الطويلة قد انتهى، جاءنا مظفر النواب بوتريات ليلية ثم بتل الزعتر وغيرهما من القصائد مما أعاد الثقة بالقصيدة المطولة. والسامع لأشرطة هذه القصائد يدرك في الحال كأنما سوق عكاظ يعاد انعقاده ثانية. وهو ظاهرة شعرية باستعماله لغة شعرية جديدة ومفردات غير مألوفة، سواء كانت هذه المفردات جنسية أم غير جنسية. وليس في الساحة شاعر عربي في اعتقادي لم يتأثر بهذه اللغة الشعرية وبهذا المناخ الشعري، ولا أستثني من ذلك الشعراء العرب المشهورين مثل نزار قباني ومحمود درويش وعبد الوهاب البياتي. وهو ظاهرة شعرية لأنه في إدائه لهذه القصائد وإلقائه لهذه الملاحم الشعرية تداخلت التموجات الصوتية واللغة الموسيقية والمضمون الشعري لخلق سيمفونية بديعة متداخلة التركيب. وهو مظاهرة شعرية لأن هذا الصوت الشعري وقف بكل صلابة أمام الدكتاتورية العربية، سياسية كانت أم اجتماعية أم فكرية أم ثقافية، وركلها بصوته النفاذ في الرأس والنصف والخاتمة، وقض مضاجعها وألبسها جلبابا أو بالأحرى خرقة من الخزي والعار إلى أبد الآبدين. وبهذا استقطب هذا الصوت الشعري حب الجماهير العربية وعطفها، فمنعت أشرطته في كل مكان تقريبا، ولكنها كانت تهرب من جيب إلى جيب، ومن بيت إلى بيت، ومن قطر إلى قطر، ومن قارة إلى قارة. وهو مظاهرة شعرية لأن شعره عبر عن آلام شعبه ووطنه بشكل إنساني لا مثيل له، وبهذا أصبح شعره كما لو كان امتدادا للجرح العراقي العميق وللمأساة العراقية المفجعة. واضطر الشاعر لمغادرة بلاده، وعاش ولا يزال يعيش سنوات مديدة منفيا عن وطنه في شنطة سفر تجوب أقطار العالم، وصار يحتك بكل الجدران كأن الغربة جرب في جلده على حد تعبيره. وهو في الأخير مظاهرة شعرية لتبنيه رغبات الشعوب العربية في العيش الحر السعيد، ولذلك احتلت القضايا العربية الراهنة والمصيرية مركزا مرموقا في شعره وكتاباته. وفي صدارة هذه القضايا القضية الفلسطينية، فكان مظفر النواب معبرا خلاقا مبدعا عن هذه القضية في كثير من قصائده. هذا فيما يخص شعره باللغة العربية الفصحى. أما شعره بالعامية العراقية فلا يحتاج إلى تبيان، فديوانه الغير حمد معروف لدى أكثركم، وقد لحن الموسيقاريون أشعاره العامية وقام بغنائها كثير من المغنين، وأنا شخصيا لم أقرأ في حياتي أشعارا أرق منها أو أجمل منها باللغة الدارجة. بالإضافة إلى هذا فمن المعروف أن مظفر النواب رسام ماهر، ويؤسفني أن أقول أنني لا أعرف عن رسومه إلا ما صاحب دواوينه، ونتمنى أن يأتي اليوم الذي تظهر فيه لوحاته في المعارض أو في الكتب. هذا باختصار مظفر النواب الشاعر الفذ. بكل فخر واعتزاز أقدم لكم شاعر الأمسية مظفر النواب.
أريد أن أعتذر عن صوتي، نيابة عن صوتي، أنا صوتي مبحوح ومررت هذه الأيام وأنا طريق السفر ومحموم وعندي غثيان وصوتي مبحوح، فاسمحوا لي يعني ما أكون بأفضل أحوالي. رقم هاتف قديم. أمس وقفت على بردة، بعد قليل تمسي أيامي في الشام 30 مدى. أوراق مزقها العشاق وراحوا، أوراق مزقها العشاق على الماء وراحوا دون صدى. لم يعد النهر صغير، لم تعد الكلمات صغيرة، لم يعد الصمت حجر. أغلقنا رغبات الشباك برقة قلب ونسينا الصبح بدون مطر. مر اثنان من العشاق المبتدئين وقالوا علبة نسيان فارغة لا تحمل أي خطر. حدقت بهم وسكبت مطر. في اليأس هناك على بردة مصطبة وضباب، واثنان كأنهما نسخة حزن منا. شيء لم يتغير في الشام. عشقي وتمر الأيام عشقي ويرن الهاتف في قلبي، لم يتوقف منذ 30 يرن، لكن من كثرة ما استعمله العشق محى الأرقام. وأدرت الأرقام الممسوحة مرات رد الصمت، لقد كانوا بالأمس هنا ما تركوا شيئا يذكر غير الصمت. دع الأشياء تنام، دع الأيام تنام. أمس ألوف الناس على بردة، رغم ألوف النسيان ظلئت أراهم. أتذكر أرقام الأمس، أدرت الصفرين، أجاب المقسم جرب ب3 أصفار. حدقت من الهاتف بالمقسم، لم يك مقسم تلك الأيام. وتساءل طفل مر بصمتي، هل بغداد على بردة أو مأت بقلبي وعلى دجلة أيضا تقع الشام.